You're listening to the Hunt Suburbia podcast. I'm your host, Pat Guyette. Big bucks I've been dreaming often, every night till I'm in a coffin. Vermont woods to the burbs of Boston, I'm looking for a tree to get lost in. Crisp mornings, little dust in the snow, quality time, just me and my bow. Fall evenings, I know just where to go for some quality times for me and my bow. It's just me and my bow. My first guest is Kevin Poulos. He is somebody I've been watching on YouTube the past couple of years as I've been trying to learn more about bow hunting and just marveling at the deer that he shot, some of the great footage he's gotten. He is a Massachusetts local, a great hunter. He's been consistently killing mature bucks, and I was excited to interview him. I think we had an awesome conversation, and if you want to check him out on YouTube, his page is called Tagged Out Productions, and I highly recommend it. So let's get into the interview. All right, first episode, Hunt Suburbia. Thanks for being here, Kevin.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, it's, you're the guinea pig. So we were just talking about before we recorded here, talking about Vermont and the antler restrictions up there and hunting, bigger woods. And this podcast is going to focus on suburban hunting, and a lot of it will be about suburban hunting. But we're going to talk about hunting from all over the country and all different types of woods and scenarios. So you said you grew up hunting in Vermont. Is that kind of where you got introduced?
As a kid. So, as I mentioned, we had a camp when way up, and like I said, it was a shack. And my father, my cousins, my brothers, all of them were hunters, fishermen. I grew up my whole life fishing, so I was fishing since I was little, nonstop.
Yeah.
But I didn't do a lot of hunting when I was little. My dad would take me here and there, take you out in the woods, tell you to be quiet 150 times over, and I really did not start getting into hunting till I was about 21.
Wow.
20 or 21, and that was in Massachusetts. My cousin and my dad had permission in Wendell, Mass, which is right next to Orange out there off Route 2.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had some private land to hunt on. And they had been hunting there for a while. They'd just bring their trailer up, plop it on the ladies' land, and hunt the woods. It was all over, hunt right out behind the trailer. And I don't even remember, honestly, how my dad just got me back into it. Don't remember, but all of a sudden I started going there on the weekends with them, and we'd hunt bow, shotgun, muzzleloader, all the seasons, and it was real tough hunting. And I think for someone to go through 7 years never shooting a deer, seeing very few deer, when someone does that, and I tell people that all the time, that then you see that person really has a passion for hunting, because they didn't get the quick reward, and some people just don't want to do that.
Well, you're a good example too, that you didn't start till you were really getting into it till you were 21. So for some, that's a late bloomer. I started at like 12 out of my dad's and my family's camp in Vermont, and I youth season and stuff, you can shoot a buck, so I was able to shoot young deer very early on and get addicted and get that bug. But I think one of the main things we want to do with this podcast is introduce new hunters into the landscape, because hunting has been declining and hunter numbers have been declining.
Yeah, true.
So we want to do that, and Kevin has killed some really nice bucks. And if you just started at 21 really getting into it, when did you kill your first big buck, would you say?
Probably 2009. I think it was 2009, so I'd been hunting.
That 7-pointer there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was probably the first mature deer I ever shot.
Yeah.
And honestly, I could probably count on my hand how many mature deer I even saw before that.
Yeah.
And I actually shot like I said, I think I shot my first deer. It was like 7 years after hunting.
Yeah. Hal Blood, he's out of Maine, and I follow the Big Woods Bucks podcast, another great podcast for people to listen to. But he always says from when he started tracking, it took him 7 years before he killed his first buck. Not even big buck, but first buck tracking. So maybe 7 years is, the magic number. But that you don't want to get discouraged from that. If you're new and you're getting into hunting, don't think it's going to be 7 years before you get your first deer. It might be. It might be 7 years before you get your first mature deer. But don't get discouraged, right?
Yeah, absolutely not. I mean, I think what kept me going, first off, I was already an outdoorsman, camping, fishing, all that. But I think once I started, the area that we hunted, it was almost like hunting Vermont, like I mentioned early on anyways, where it was hard to even see a deer.
Yeah.
A lot of mountain laurel. You see buck sign everywhere, but really hard to see deer. I just wanted to see deer.
How far is that from like Leominster, Fitchburg area off of Route 2? Because
Wendell's probably about a half an hour from there, maybe a little bit more.
That's the first kind of terrain and mass that I hunted. Because, like I said, I'm from Vermont, but I've been living, I was living in Quincy for a few years, and I decided to check out Massachusetts, see if there's anywhere to hunt. The first thing I did was look at some maps, and I totally wasn't used to looking in small, pockets of woods, 20, 30 acres. I was thinking, all right, let me try to find some Vermont-style woods. And the Fitchburg area was kind of the closest. It was like an hour's drive from Quincy, but it was bigger woods, and that's where I brought my bow. I didn't have any stands. I was sitting on the ground, and that's where I saw my first and had my first opportunity with a buck. Was just sitting on the ground during some rain. It was super quiet, and I was on my phone looking at fantasy football. And I just felt like something was, I felt a presence. Yeah. I looked over to my right, and there was a buck probably 25 yards, nose in the air, sniffing. He had an idea that I was there, and I was just watching your videos, and it reminds me of, there was one video where you were shooting, you're about to shoot, I think it was the 10-pointer a couple years ago, and your arrow clinked off, and that happened to me on my first ever buck. I was able to get up on my knees, pivot around, put the release, on the string, and it clanked off and smashed into a pine tree, 15 yards in front of me.
That's, your heart just sinks.
It sank, and that perked him right up, and I had a standoff with him for 5 minutes. He was kind of peeking through the laurels at me, and walking back and forth. I never ended up getting another shot on him, but I learned something.
Yeah. Well, I had a bad luck experience like that on probably the second biggest buck I've ever seen, and at the time it was the biggest one I'd ever seen, where I brought my arrows to somebody different and had them put nocks on and everything, and I had a situation where I got to my stand, and I already shot a smaller buck that year, and I had two deer up above me. It was early season, and one of them came walking right past my stand. It was a small 6-point. I let him go, but I knew there was another deer with him. And as soon as he got into the swamp, sure enough, I hear crunch, crunch. I look up, and there's a huge 12-pointer coming down. And, of course, it was the biggest deer I've ever seen. My heart was pumping, and I had my bow in front of me, and just waiting to draw back. And I had a pine tree that I was going to walk behind if he followed the 6-pointer, and I was going to draw. I had it all planned out. It was all set, and he got straight out in front of me about 20 yards. And I just stood there and watched my arrow just fall off, and like you said, clink off the tree, fall down to the ground. Of course, he was in full alert, stared right up. He didn't stare at me, but stared at the tree. Long story short, he was gone. I looked down at my arrow. I looked down at my bow, and my nock was still sitting on the string. And
the nock fell out of the arrow.
The glue had just, whatever glue you'd used, no good. Now, of course, like they always say, anything bad that's going to happen, it's going to happen right that moment when the deer's there. Well, sure enough, that was like an awful example of it. I just, my first real sick feeling as a hunter was that time, in disbelief. But
it doesn't always, sometimes you're going to get a second opportunity at the deer, like that one, on your YouTube. If arrow fell off, he stopped 15 yards. It seems like he didn't even hear the arrow fall.
It's funny that deer, if that deer was completely looking for a fight. Yeah. He came in, made those scrapes. He was all bristled up. I think if I threw a rock at him, he wouldn't even have cared. He just wanted to see where that buck was. Because that arrow literally fell right next to him. It didn't make a ton of noise, but it literally fell right next to him and I think he was walking at the same time, so maybe his footsteps.
And did that one come in did you rattle him in?
Yeah, so that deer that's the only deer I've ever rattled in that I shot. And I don't ever really rattle. It's not something I ever do. And I hadn't even carried my rattle bag in my bag for the last couple seasons. And I don't know why, but that night before I did. And that morning I saw a big buck on the other side of the ridge, or I just saw a huge rack is all I saw. And then I started bleeding. I think I started bleeding, and then next thing I knew, behind me, that 10-pointer came down. And he came down on me so fast I didn't even have the bow in my hand. And I thought he was a smaller buck, but it ended up being one of his side. A couple times were broken. And that's why, like, when he walked away, I realized, I should have shot that deer.
They always look bigger walking away.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And but I kind of could tell he was mature. When he first came down, I didn't think he was. And, sometimes you have a few seconds to make a decision. And by then, it was too late. And I bleated at him, and he stopped but didn't even look my way, and he was gone. So I decided, I'm like, you know what? I got a big buck somewhere, probably bedded down up over there. He's down there. I'll be happy to shoot him. I broke out the rattle bag, started grunting and rattling, and he came in maybe a minute and a half. He came in, and he made, I think, 2 or 3 different scrapes, and he made one under my stand.
Yeah, you guys got to watch this video. Go to his YouTube. It's Tagged Out Productions, and I think this is 2018, right?
Yeah, it was the year before last year. And
incredible video. I mean, he's just right under his stand doing a scrape. I mean,
you can even see him actually peeing in it.
yeah. Then he pees on his haunches, and
I never got video of that before. But he came in right under my stand, like you said, And at that point, that's when kind of panic sets in with the camera. I always tell myself with filming that if I think anything with the camera is going to mess me up, I'm not worrying about the camera. I just want to shoot the deer.
Yeah.
If I get footage, that's awesome. I could not have got luckier with that footage because, he stopped right there. He started to walk away at a sharp angle. My arrow fell off. I grabbed the arrow, put it on as he's walking away, thinking, 2 more steps. He's gone behind those trees. He stops. I get to move the camera on him.
Yeah.
Think about the shot because as I drew back, I'm like, ooh, that's kind of at sharp angle, and I slipped it in there, and he piled up like 20 yards away.
And then that's the same day, right after that deer died. You stayed in the stand and you rattled in another buck, right?
No, actually, that buck came in like about a minute after that happened. So the buck that I saw with the big rack, I think he probably had heard me rattling. He had heard me grunting. He probably heard the other buck come in.
And then he heard him flopping around.
And he heard him flopping around. He heard him crash because when the deer crashed, he hit a whole bunch of branches. And he probably just thought that was a deer fight. And I was texting my friends. I think I was just about to call my wife. And I looked up and all I saw was this huge rack come trotting down the hill straight in front of me. And I grabbed the bow, put another arrow in. I think it was my last arrow. And turned the camera on. But what stinks is I double punched the camera. Mm-hmm. So I didn't film him coming down.
You still get some footage of it. You can see it.
I did when he walked away. Yeah. So he had come down probably in the best spot he could have came down. Well, one of the best spots, and he was running in looking, and I saw he had a big drop tine on him. Never seen this deer before. Little did I know that I had trail cam pictures of him that I hadn't checked my camera yet. But he came trotting in and I whistled at him, something, stopped him broadside, absolutely perfect. I think it was 22 yards.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
Broadside, nothing in my way, and I just shot right under his belly. I don't know what happened. It had been the first time I'd missed at a deer in probably 20 years, maybe. I don't even know.
So what do you attribute that to? Did you guess in the moment that you didn't have time to reshoot to see how far he was away? What did you just guess that he was closer,
no, I knew
further
the distance. Away? No. And I had my 20-yard pin right on him. I just think I dropped my arm. I think I just made some kind of simple mistake. Honestly, I don't even remember if I was in panic at the time.
You probably still had some adrenaline going from that 10-pointer.
Absolutely. Yeah. But, one of the things I think that, and I think a lot of hunters get it, that of course, I probably just jinxed myself, but that helps shoot deer that helps me shoot some of the bigger deer is just somehow in that moment not having the adrenaline going through. I don't know. You just zone in. I think that's how a lot of guys shoot. And I don't think it's anything you don't learn or practice. It just somehow it happens, maybe from experience. Because there's no doubt I get super pumped up and my adrenaline flies off the handle, especially after or even before. But if I remember correctly, I was pretty calm. I think I just dropped my arm. I did the same thing on a bear in Canada years ago. I think I just, simple mistake. It's the only thing I can think of because I had the pin right on him and he wasn't moving. I mean, but it sailed right under him.
Speaking of adrenaline, I just want to play this real quick and get your reaction.
Yeah, that's the biggest deer I've shot so far.
And that was
a 10-pointer.
All right, so this deer has a great story, right? Was that the year that your son was born?
Yeah, and I actually had got that story printed in Northeast Big Bug Club.
Oh, good, nice.
Yeah, I've had a couple articles I got posted in there, which was cool. And that one was the first one, and that actually has a couple good stories linked into it. So that deer, my wife was pregnant, and we ended up having my son. I think it was 4 days after I shot that deer. And I'd already shot a buck earlier in the season, a smaller 8-pointer, and I was super excited because I knew once my wife was having the baby, I'm done, my season's over. I'll be home all the time, helping out.
So I told my wife when we just had our first kid in June, but we planned it so that he wasn't born during hunting season.
Well, it's funny because before we knew he was due, like right in the middle of the rut, and I was joking the whole summer. I said, I'm going to, that kid's never going to live it down. I'm going to because I thought I was not going to have a productive season. I had a lot going on and didn't think I was going to hunt a lot. And I had an awesome season. I saw a handful of mature bucks that season, and I shot 2. So you can't ask me. I was excited just to shoot 1.
I think there's something to the luck of, your firstborn son, your first baby.
So that deer... I'd said to my wife I was done already before that day. My wife was going to be induced. She was a week late, so she was going to be induced the following Monday. And that Friday, I needed to take my dad, who was ill, I needed to take him to a doctor's appointment that day. So I said, you know what? His appointment's later. My parents live close to where I was hunting. And I said, I will take the day off and I'll just hunt in the morning just for the heck of it. It's the middle of the rut.
Did you have to get permission from the wife?
I don't even remember. I'm sure my wife had a lot of things to say as far as, hey, we got something going on next Monday. But no, my wife's like ridiculously supportive of hunting. And, I could probably go on and talk about stories with just her for, an hour. But, no, she was really supportive, but I'm sure she had something to say. But, like, what are you going to do with that deer if you get it,
And at that point, you got it's scheduled, right? You know when the baby's coming.
Oh, sure.
Right? So.
Sure. So we knew. I mean, I had a lot of things to do that weekend to get ready to go. We were going to the hospital. So I really, not expecting to shoot something. I'm just going out to sit in the woods one more time, know? See stuff. That's the win right there if you get to see stuff. So I went in the stand. Again, I was filming. At this time, I was filming my wife. Again, super supportive of hunting. She had purchased me this thing from Cabela's that can mount to your bow, and you can put a camcorder on it, which a lot of guys probably think that's insane. You're going to throw the balance off of your bow and all that. I just got used to using it, and and I filmed a few deer that I shot with that. Probably 3 bucks.
You had to practice with it all summer, right?
Sure, I practiced with it, but it got used to it pretty quick. So I had that thing on, and the only thing stunk about it is it shakes when you shoot. But I did not care about the actual footage. I'm just doing it for myself. I was doing it for my dad at the time, so I could bring footage for him to watch.
Yeah.
So I'm using that. And that morning, I had 2 small bucks come by, and the second one came by and was standing broadside at 15 yards. And the funny part about that is you can hear me on the video say that, why can't a 10-pointer do that? Because he was standing right there broadside at 15 yards. That's right. And sure enough, the buck ended up shooting. He stood in that exact spot.
That same day.
10-pointer the same day, an hour later. And so when he came down, I remember I was texting with my cousin, and we were going back and forth, and I was like, God, I'm seeing bucks. Yeah, they're all little the last few days. And I said, I think they're just all locked up with those. All the mature bucks are locked up. I said, I think I even said, I'm kind of glad. I'm not worried now that I'm not hunting next week, because I just think they're locked down. I literally hit send on that text, and I heard this twig snap up behind me. And I looked up, and I saw his side profile, and was like, all right, that's a monster. I'm like, everything, you start breaking down, and I'm like, started panicking. And
how many times since then have you been sitting in the stand, seen a small buck, and said to see if you could repeat it, I wish you were a 10-pointer.
Oh, yeah.
You have to do that all the time now.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was ridiculous the way it happened.
I'm going to start doing that.
He even came from the same spot, the same direction behind me, downwind. I think that was the first year I started using buck bomb, and that's the other reason I had sprayed buck bomb in the area too. So, that helped obviously bringing him into that area. But,
yeah, we'll talk some strategy when you're done with this story about buck bombs, rattling, all that stuff.
But so that deer came down, and he was zigzagging, and then he angled. I almost was going to shoot him at 35 yards, but he was moving, and at the last second he angled and turned and came right at my stand, and he just turned broadside. He didn't stop where I'd sprayed the buck bomb, but he walked right through it, and I whistled and stopped him and shot him at I think it was 15 yards. And I honestly at the time I knew I hit him behind the shoulder somewhere, but I wasn't sure, and he bolted. And if you look in that video, even the quality's not that good because it's an older camera. I mean, when I saw I saw him run for 60, 50 yards anyways, and all I saw, that huge rack from behind, and I watched him run the whole way. And well, it's funny because he went down right within sight, but I didn't see it and I didn't hear it. He just happened to go down maybe 60 yards, if that. And yeah, I put those phone calls and stuff that I made on the video just because I think it's funny. I think that's the best part of hunting is when guys are losing it on the stand because it shows that they're really passionate.
That's why we do it. You do it for that adrenaline rush and that release afterwards. Literally, you that first buck I told you about. It was a tiny buck where my arrow clanged. Sitting on the ground. That was my first experience with a buck with a bow in my hand, and he was a small buck. He was like maybe a 5 or a 6 pointer, a year and a half, but after I had that standoff with him and was just waiting for him to step out from behind that laurel, as soon as he walked away, I started shaking. And that's just a little 5-6 pointer, right? But anytime you have an experience with a deer up close and personal like that, I mean, it gets you going, and that's why we do it.
Yeah, if you don't get excited, I mean, I'm not saying I would stop hunting. I know some guys say that the day I stop. I don't know if I would stop hunting, but I mean, honestly, it would bother me because. It's just a thrill. I mean, pretty much every hunter knows to see a mature buck, any deer in the woods, depending on when you're hunting.
As soon as you start hearing the crunching of the leaves, your heart will kick up a couple notches.
Yeah. So after I shot that buck, I just posted. I wouldn't post that. Actually, it wasn't even Facebook then, but I was texting and calling and all that, and it was. All that adrenaline just let go, and I couldn't even believe. I didn't even know what I shot. Honestly, I had no clue if it was. I didn't know. I just knew it was tall. It was big.
Is that your biggest deer?
Yeah, scoring wise, it is.
Yep.
I have one other one that would have scored a lot higher, but it had broken a lot of stuff. And again, I'm not really a big guy in score, but it's still another interesting part of the deer and stuff. But yeah, he's definitely the nicest. He's a really good looking deer.
So your son brought you a lot of luck that year.
Yeah, well, it is funny. The last little part of that story is that so my wife got induced that Monday. The whole weekend I spent running around, getting to the getting stuff to the taxidermist, getting to the butcher, all that stuff, going back and forth. And then when my son was born, he was the exact inside spread of the rack. And I forget where I was, but when they told me how long, because they tell you...
Yeah, like 19 and a half inches.
They tell you how long he is and how much he weighs. And when the guy when he said 20 and a half inches, I was like, oh, that's how wide the inside spread of my deer was.
That's awesome.
And my wife looks at me like, you're crazy, but...
So, this year, my son was born June 25th, and on the 23rd, I went out for a walk to go check some cameras I had up. A couple days before he was born, I didn't know he wasn't, she wasn't getting induced, so I didn't know exactly when he was going to get born. But during that walk, I had a minute and a half, 2-minute standoff with the biggest buck I've seen in the woods to date, and that was 2 days before my son was born.
That's
so
cool.
I'm hoping that that luck's going to wear off, and I'm going to get a shot at that buck this year.
It can happen anywhere at any second. I mean, it's really true, especially in Massachusetts. Especially during the rut, it's like, my favorite reason for hunting the rut is not because obviously there's more action and stuff, but you can get a lot of bucks in your area that you don't normally see.
Yeah, none of those
mature
cam bucks
bucks
are going to come through.
Right, so you might know your area pretty well, and you got this buck and that buck, and that's it, and then a bunch of does, and then but once you get into the second, especially the third week of November, pretty much the third week of November every year, I don't care what they say, it's always that for me, is when you just start seeing these rogue bucks just showing up.
So you had a story that you told me a couple of weeks ago, I think, just over text, of a buck that came 2 or 3 towns over, right? The chocolate buck?
So this is actually a pretty good story. This is actually the story that led me to shoot my first deer back in like 2006. No, what am I saying? Like 2003, I think it was, or 4. I still have been hunting. Got into more hunting now, and pretty much I locked right into bow hunting pretty much early on. I mean, I still would a little bit here and there hunt shotgun, but pretty much just fell in love with the bow early on in my 20s, and just that's what I want to hunt with all the time.
You get first dibs on all the bucks if you're a bow hunter too.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of reasons. I mean, I do. Don't get me wrong. Like in Vermont, I really miss having a gun in your hand and just walking the woods and hunting. I mean, that's a whole nother story. It's a whole nother topic. But yeah, I mean, definitely bow hunting. So I still hadn't shot a deer at all, and I was hunting out in Franklin, I believe it was, near my work at the time. I had a couple spots, seen deer, but nothing going on. And so where my cousin had just moved to, he had just got into hunting. I kind of introduced him a little bit to it. We set up stands for him and stuff, and it's right around in this area. And I hadn't hunted there at all. I just set a stand up for him, and you kind of like got him going a little bit, and he was, he got right into hunting and everything. Another outdoorsman. And so I wasn't hunting there, and I had planned, it was the day before Thanksgiving, I had planned to hunt by my work. And that cousin of mine had called me and said that his neighbor that lives across the street had said that he had seen that morning his apple tree at 9 o'clock, a giant buck that looked like a moose. It was all black fur.
It's crazy.
And he said the weird characteristic about it, besides being black, was that its antlers went straight out from the side of its head, way out. Well, the weird part of that is 3 towns over, 3 days before that, maybe 4 or 5 days before that, my cousin that I had been talking to you earlier about that had passed away, that was a big hunter, he had been telling my dad about the exact same deer. Same description. So it was the same deer.
Yeah, there's no way there's 2 of those.
No. So, and it was through, town forests and a lot of woods and stuff where it could easily just rogue and go through a bunch of towns in, even one day. And so that kind of just sparked me to say, hey, I'm going to come down hunting with you tonight. Not really thinking I'm going to see the deer, but, that just got me going. So the 2 of us went and hunted that night. And sure enough, I ended up shooting a big doe that night. First deer ever. And it was a big one. And that kind of led to that. But
not only does that show that bucks will travel long distances during the rut, for anybody that's listening that's getting just new into getting into hunting and don't know too much about deer movement, they travel a lot and a lot more during the rut, and they're not afraid to cross roads.
No.
For many years I would think, oh, all right, I saw a deer in that patch of woods. You look at the map, you think that that's a huge boundary for them, but deer cross the roads constantly.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it's it definitely, once they are done with that first doe in heat, if there's not a lot of population there that of does or any in heat, they're gone.
Yeah,
they'll come back and circle through, and they might have a couple areas, but that's why I like I said, the second, third week of November, which everybody knows, or most hunters know, that's obviously almost I feel a third, anywhere between the 16th, 15th, and like the 21st. I don't know what it is. I started keeping data like a few years ago. I never was somebody that really did that, but I started doing that just as sightings, and last year wasn't that great, but usually it's those couple of weeks right there.
Did you get deer last year?
No, I did not shoot a deer last year. I passed a lot of deer. I did not. I think last year, I passed a lot of deer. I think the only place that I actually had a chance to even shoot any younger bucks was an area that I wouldn't shoot younger bucks. And I only saw 1 mature buck, I think, in that spot last year, and it was an absolute giant. It was a deer that I jumped with some does the year before. He's a huge chocolate rack buck. He would easily be the biggest deer I ever shot, probably over 150. Just monster. And that's the only mature buck I saw. Some of the other areas, I did a lot of hunting with my son. which is its reward in its own. So I still hunted enough myself. It just was one of those years. I've had a couple of those years in the last 4 or 5 years, I think, that just were just not seeing them.
Yeah, you don't always
Typical.
get them, and
No.
that's why it's called hunting, right?
Yeah.
And it's not,
yeah.
It's not just killing. You're not always gonna. Even somebody like you consistently gets big bucks. You're gonna have years where you can come up empty.
I mean, honestly, and I don't. My wife minds it. I don't mind it not getting a deer. My wife minds it because she loves venison. So, I said definitely this year I'm not. I'll be filling my freezer.
You shoot does ever?
Yeah, I haven't for a few years, really, and not because of I don't shoot does. There's nothing to do with that at all. It just seems like most of my opportunities that are either with bucks, young bucks, or mature bucks, and then when I get an opportunity with a doe, it's right in the middle of the rut.
Yeah, and you want
and
to
I
keep
already
them around.
I get deer cruise, and it's like I'm not shooting. I definitely tell myself that. That's when I won't shoot a doe. I've so many times, in the past, you think the doe's alone, and all of a sudden here comes this mature buck zigzagging from out of nowhere, and he pushes her off, and he's gone. You're like, what the hell just happened? And it's just like, I've had that happen so many times, real quickly like that. They're in and out, and you think, that doe did not have that buck trailing her. He just picked her up. He was 300 yards away and picked up her scent. And,
yeah, their noses are incredible, and you're always your dad tells you growing up, and when you start hunting, and noise, keeping your noise down, keeping your scent down, all that's super important. But until you start seeing what their noses can do, and I saw it last year on trail cameras numerous times. My uncle in Vermont shot a 10-pointer, and I had him on a camera not too far behind the camp there, going up a log road. Had him rubbing a tree right on the cam, which was great. And then you just watch what happens over the next couple of weeks. Even 2 weeks later, a deer will be cruising through 40 yards off of that tree.
Yep.
30, 40 yards off of that tree, and you see him start going up the hill and stop in his tracks.
Yeah.
Turn around with his nose up, go right to that tree, smell it, rub it. Does are rubbing their heads on it. I mean, so many deer stopped on that tree. They can smell it 2 weeks later. Right?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, their scent. I mean, I think most hunters know that. It's
one of the things that we're going to do every single week this year is hand out some amazing prizes to our listeners. So we have 10 Onyx subscriptions that we're going to give out. We have a Big Woods Bucks wool fanny pack made by Silent Predator. It's a really great pack. You can keep all your stuff in it, and you don't have to wear a backpack. Just straps onto your side. Great for people who put on a lot of miles in the woods. And also from the Big Woods Bucks team, we're going to give away 2 sets of books that have been written on the art of tracking white-tailed deer in the Big Woods. 2 of those books are from Hal Blood, and the other one is from Mark Sheeran. They just full of knowledge. Really great reads. So we're going to hand out all of those, and every single week on the podcast, we will announce a winner for one of the prizes. And all you have to do, this is the first task, is either like us on Facebook, like us on Instagram, go to iTunes and subscribe to the podcast, give us a 5-star rating, or subscribe to the YouTube page and just leave a comment. On all of those things, just like, follow, subscribe, and leave a comment or a review. We're going to follow along, and we're going to draw a name every single week on the podcast, and just give away some really great stuff. So the first task is just go like, follow, subscribe, leave a review or a comment on any of our pages. They're all at Hunt Suburbia. So it's facebook.com/Hunt Suburbia, instagram.com/Hunt Suburbia, youtube.com/Hunt Suburbia, and on iTunes, Spotify, you can go find the podcast and subscribe to it and leave a review, and you'll be entered into the raffle every single week to win something awesome.
The week before I shot my first deer, I was told my brother I'm quitting because I was hunting in Vermont, again, we're talking like 7 years in, and
if you're just starting hunting, Vermont might not be the place for you. I've had a guy that I introduced to hunting in college, and he hunted 7 years out of my deer camp, and he probably saw less than 7 deer in those 7 years, and he didn't get one, and he started getting discouraged. He went to the wine country, Finger Lakes, New York. One of our buddies works out on a vineyard there, and he started hunting there, and it's, big bucks all over the place.
I mean, it's like you said, it's totally, I mean, every area has its own challenges, and you kind of have to take it for what it is. Like you said, if you grew up in Vermont hunting, you earned every deer you got.
Yeah.
Not that you don't earn your deer in Massachusetts, but it's just...
Yeah, it's different.
There's a lot of, even Maine, a lot of areas of Maine now that are just, you're going to earn any deer you get up in northern Maine. But yeah, I mean, Vermont was tough. That case that I was talking about, I was in a stand, and I still hadn't shot a deer, and it was bow season, and a doe came in, and the wind was perfect. I was in a climber. I was hidden. I was walking through thick pines. There was a little hole in the pines that I saw it walk through, and it was about to walk down in an open area for me to shoot, and it was about 30 yards away, and it just snapped its head back after it walked through the hole, and now its head was like looking through the hole up in my direction.
Yeah.
There's no way it could see me, so somehow the wind swirled, even though it appeared to, and the doe was gone. I thought, this is it, 7 years, the wind's perfect, this deer has no clue I'm here, it's about to walk in a wide open area that as long as I make the shot, it's done. Nope, it bounced its head back, looked somewhere near me, turned and walked back where it came. I got down. I don't even know if I finished the night. I got down, I went in, and I told my brother, I said, I'm done. I'm done. I quit. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I've been putting in hours and hours for 7 years. I go, what this deer just did doesn't make any sense to me. I said, I'm done. And I'm sure he gave me a pep talk. And then 1 week later, boom, I shoot my first deer.
Well, how seriously were you taking your scent control then?
I think back then, I think most of our gear, nothing was in a Tupperware container or anything like that. I think we used to just spray down with I seem to remember using like earth scent stuff back then. I think we used to wear the wafers. I think that's all we did. I don't even think I had spray then.
Yeah.
I think we used to wear like some kind of wafers. But yeah, our clothes are hanging in camp, and it definitely makes a difference. I mean, there's no doubts, and you can't completely fool in those, but it definitely helps.
You hear about guys, and it happens in Vermont all the time, that are smoking cigarettes all day long and shooting bucks. But it's got to be, the wind's got to be right in their face, perfect. If a buck got a scent of a cigarette, they're out of there.
Yeah, I mean, to lead into talking about buck bomb, in scents, I think I've had 2 deer now that I've shot, with the wind blowing, my scent blowing right at them, but they smelled that buck bomb and was...
it saved you a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, one of the bucks that I shot a few years ago, I think that was one that I didn't actually have my camera on. I think I turned the camera on afterwards. It happened at first light. The deer must have been on top of the hill downwind of me and heard me walking in because it was really loud. And it probably was stopping at the top of the hill, just trying to figure out what I was. And I sprayed buck bomb on the ground and on a tree right by my stand. I climbed up on my stand, and as soon as I got my stand, I heard it coming down. So my scent was all over the place down on the ground. My scent was blowing, but he smelled the buck bomb, and it just happened to be the right day. I just think with scents and buck bomb, it's just, it's got to be right day.
If the wind, did you know going in that day that the wind was going to be blowing in the wrong direction? Or was it a swirling wind day where, it just kind of changed up?
No, I mean, literally, I got in late that day. And so this is the stand that I was hunting is not one that I ever pay attention to the wind. It's a transitional stand.
That's what I was going to ask. There are stands where you don't even pay attention to the wind. You'll just hunt it no matter what?
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I feel like a lot of places, I've been hunting in Massachusetts for a long time, and I just feel like a lot of the hunting in Massachusetts...
they're used to human scent, right? It's a lot of suburban.
They're used to human scent, but I feel like I end up with a lot of spots, a lot of areas that the deer come from multiple directions. Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, if you know their exact bedding area, and there's only one bedding area right there, you can set up and you don't want that wind blowing in there. But I'll tell you, I can think of maybe a couple spots I have that deer are only going to bed over in this area. They can come from anywhere. So yes, I do pay attention to wind. This particular stand, I never do. I never not hunt the stand because of the wind direction, because literally deer will come from this spot, come through this spot from any direction at any time.
Do they come from where you come from sometimes? Do
Yep.
they follow right on your trail?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, they'll come from anywhere. It's just a transitional spot right in the middle, wide open woods in the middle of, on the edge of some thicker woods, but, between bedding areas.
Do you find yourself trying to find more spots like that, as you do scouting, or are you pretty well scouted? You've got your stands. You don't really, look for new spots at this point.
So,
or I guess the question is, if you were going to give advice to somebody to go find they're scouting a new spot, how do you try to find this current type of place that you've got where you've killed all these big bucks?
I think if you can just find multiple, obviously if the deer have to be holding there, there's going to be food. I mean, that's food, water, and shelter. But if you know there's multiple bedding areas. So that spot completely, I found it by accident. I had been hunting the same area closer to a bedding area for I don't know how many years. And it was a few of us that hunt this spot. There's like 3 of us. And there's other guys that hunt in there that really aren't supposed to. But there's at least 3 of us that are in there. We have our spots. We pretty much would just stay in one stand.
Mm-hmm.
And then one year I had a stand and I said, I'm moving this thing. I want to go to this one spot. We call it the Bowl. And it's wide open. It's like a couple ridges all around it. And then there's another bedding area on the side. But I had no clue. One night, I hadn't seen a deer all season hunting different areas. And I honestly don't remember what time of year it was. I'm going to guess it's the first week of November. But I put a stand. I just went in. I said, I just want to sit on the edge of this bowl where I can see around. I can just see where they're coming from. And I put the stand up, and I saw 13 deer that night. I saw 6 bucks, 13 deer.
Jesus.
And almost shot one nice 6-pointer. He just wouldn't stop for me. And that was in and they were small bucks chasing doe. I mean, it was crazy. It was like I was in a farm. I couldn't believe it. And so I just kept hunting that stand, not knowing really that, okay, this is a transitional area between literally like 4 bedding areas.
Yeah, you were just hunting the momentum at that point.
Correct. And so I just kept hunting the stand. It had good cover, even though it was kind of on the edge of thick, but in the open, it had good cover. And I just kept hunting, and just over the years, that turned into my best stand. Shoot and see most of my deer out of that stand during the rut, just because it's a transitional area. It's not super close to a bedding area, like right on the edge or anything like that. It's just they come through, they hug the cover, and then they have to go through the open area to get to the other bedding areas.
So for the newbie that's listening that doesn't know anything about deer, how do you find where they bed? What's the type of area that a deer consistently beds in?
So I guess it obviously depends. If you want to talk about Massachusetts, I know a lot of guys have a lot of success in suburban, in a lot of areas, even out here it's suburban. I mean, it's not big woods, but when you get into the woods, like I'll use this area that we found, or I shouldn't say we found, that we went to, that we started hunting years ago. My cousin moved near there. I took a walk out back with him. Right away, there's an old swamp, dried up swamp right there. So you just kind of figured out that this swamp kind of pinches with a bunch of houses. And so that these deer are bedding somewhere along the thickest part of the swamp, between the houses, behind the houses, somewhere in that thick area there.
They actually feel safe when they're closer to houses.
Correct. Definitely around here.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that there's no doubt, especially once you see, obviously once the winter comes and they're feeding on everyone's shrubs.
Yeah.
They'll bed literally 2 feet behind the house. I mean, but as far as finding bedding areas, I think it's tough. I'll be honest with you. I'm no pro at that. I mean, you obviously can scout. You obviously looking for thick area that has food nearby.
Yeah.
Thick
high
cover. High grass, thick trees, pines. I mean, this one area that I hunt a lot, that we hunt, it has 3 different types of bedding areas, all, less than a quarter mile from each other, between thick pines, dried up swamps, and then brushy, kind of laurely, low brush kind of cover in another area. And they use all 3 of those areas.
I know I found myself driving myself nuts sometimes, overthinking, whether you're scouting or you're just hunting on the fly, and you walk into a place and you're trying to think, is this where they're going to eat, or is this where they're going to bed? And I think a lot of times it actually is. It is both, and that's the hardest. It's the hardest thing for me to try to find where I'm going to put my stand. Like if you're going into a like a CRP type field or something with high grass and there's a young trees all over the place and a lot of forage all around. You see beds right in the middle of all that stuff, but it's obviously where they're eating too. And my cams have shows them eating all the bushes, eating the grass. So I mean that's kind of, they have no reason to get up and move out of an area like that. So it's really hard to find where to put a stand. I guess the best thing you can do is just don't go too far into it. Try to hit the edge, right?
So I'll tell you, so the one thing that I do with hunting, whether it's successful or not, I have no clue, is I do not do a ton of scouting during the season, or I like to get in there and just see what happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And
That's
then
I
figure
did it
out.
for 20 years, I never put any time into scouting.
And I should probably rephrase that. I do actually do
if you have
do
the
a
time,
lot of
do it.
scouting. I do a lot of scouting after the season's over. So January, February, March. I do a lot of scouting then.
The snow helps, right? The snow helps for scouting. Is to see tracks and
the snow and just the one thing I don't like to do at all during September, October, during the season especially, is walk around at all.
Yeah.
I don't like to walk around, check trail cameras.
Yep.
I don't like to do any of that.
I'm guilty of that.
Yeah, I mean, especially obviously if it's an area I know it has deer. Even if I'm not getting any pictures or I'm not seeing deer, if I know they're there, year after year, I'm not walking around. I'm not looking for a better spot. But even a new spot, if I know the area somewhat and try to have an idea where to set up, I don't want to get down and walk around and say, okay, I'm not seeing any deer. I'm going to go check this area out. Not right away anyways. It just, because I just feel like that just kills it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's kind of a standard thing to say that, oh yeah, you don't want to spread your scent around, but I read or see a lot of guys that they just constantly checking cameras.
Yeah. Listen, I'm one of them. And
I've done it too. I
struggle with it though, because like I do go in, I'll check this year, this new spot, I put up a camera. I was so excited to go see what was on it. I started getting some big bucks on the camera. And I mean, I was checking it every 10 days in the beginning, and it didn't do anything to the activity. There was the same amount, if not more deer, more bucks, right in the area. And I just went and checked it last week, and they were all still, there. So I struggle with it sometimes, thinking, I don't know. The more suburban it is, I feel like, that the more used to seeing humans they are, getting bumped out of places. And
like you said, it definitely depends on your area, too. If it's an area that people are walking through all the time.
Yeah.
Usually what I do is I will set, if even a new area, I'll go in, and I'm probably going to have to do a lot of it this year because I'm getting into saddle hunting, whole nother topic, but this year, and which is going to allow me a lot easier access just to jump in and out of new spots. I think that deters me sometimes, that if it's a spot I've never scouted and gone into, and it's, I want to waste my day right now carrying in the stand and sticks and all that stuff.
Sweating your balls off.
Right. But what I'll usually do, if it's brand new, is I'll go in, bring at least one or two cams with me, and I'll have them set up kind of on my way to my stand, and I'll hunt that stand a few times. And I'll check the cams a few times. And if there's nothing, then I'll move. But I don't want to... And I might even go in deep one area and set a camera up, but I'm not going to check that till later. And then if I've hunted this area a few times... Because I feel like when I get to a new spot, this spot, I'm not expecting anything out of it this year. This is for next year.
Yeah.
The year after.
Yeah.
Hopefully I'll observe stuff that's in there, And maybe I'll get some trail cameras. And if I screw it up, I'll be ready next year.
And I think that's good advice for new people, too, is... Don't check your camera. If your cameras are out in front of your stand, don't check them the day you're hunting when you get in there. But if you want to check cameras on the way in, it's nice. It is nice to put it on the trail. You're leaving your scent there anyway, getting to your stand, and check those on the way up if you want to. Bring the cars with you, but don't get out in front of your stand and start leaving your scent if you can help it.
I mean, most of the spots that I already know that I hunt, I really just, the trail cameras are just for inventory, and I'll just try and put them in a well-traveled area just to see what's actually in there.
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous how many times that I don't get any pictures of bucks, and I see them more than during the daylight than I get any pictures of them in a high trafficked area. on my trail camera. It's just it's weird.
Cameras don't always trigger, you know. And
it's like I was talking to a friend of mine that's kind of got into hunting the last year or two recently, and I'm just trying to tell him. He's like, nothing on the trail camera. There's nothing in here. I'm like, listen, don't ever judge what's in your area by the trail camera. Look for sign. Look for deer. Look, if you don't see them, you don't see sign, they might not be in there. Don't judge it by a trail camera. Don't at all. That's like the worst thing you could do. I think that's, if you're trying to give advice to new hunters, I guess that's probably a big thing, because that's a big market is trail cameras. I mean, over the last few years, and now, the big thing the last few years is cell cams, and I see a lot of guys, they buy tons of cameras, and especially for a lot of hunting we do around here, where the deer, like I said, they come from different directions. You're not hunting out in the Midwest on a food plot where I have buddies that are from Illinois I have buddies that are out in Illinois, and super big hunters, and they take care of all the agricultural. They have their fields set up. They have the cameras right on the food plots.
You can pattern them out there better, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And they get hundreds of pictures of them out on the food. I just feel it's very tough in Mass, not only because of the food sources are all over, and you're not necessarily dealing with fields and farms, but also because they have a lot of travel routes.
Yeah.
And that's my experience anyways from a lot of areas that I hunt, that there's a whole lot, they could come from anywhere. So you could set that camera on there and not see a buck for 3 weeks.
I mean, I'm new to bow hunting. I've hunted my whole life. I'm 33, been hunting since I was 10, but I've still and I just started doing trail cameras and getting pretty addicted to it.
Yeah.
The last few years, and I've never still even seen a buck that I've had on trail cameras during the time that I sat in that stand. Never killed one, never even seen one of the bucks that I've got on trail cameras. So if you want to do it, get out there. They can be handy for helping to scout, but it definitely doesn't always translate, and like you said, especially here, into killing a buck or killing that specific buck.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely can help you, and I'm not going to say the trail cameras don't help. I mean, you can. They've helped me kill deer. There's no doubt. I think a good message would be don't focus too much on trail cameras.
Yeah.
Don't think that, okay, the deer walked by this trail camera here a couple days here, that you're going to set your stand up and you're going to see them.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the simplest message to say is don't trust your faith in trail cameras, and do not think because you don't see any you're not getting any pictures, that the deer aren't there.
Well, I've had a lot of success taping.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah. I've had a lot of success taping my uncle's deer. 3 years in a row, my uncle's killed a deer that I've gotten on a trail camera. So he'll always, in Vermont, he'll as soon as I hear the bang, I'll get a text, and it's a photo from my uncle, and he says, "Thanks again for videoing my deer."
That's funny.
Yeah. Let's go to you were talking about rattling earlier,
sure.
and that you never, for some reason, you never rattled, and you did that day. Is there a reason why? You're kind of new to rattling, or you never believed in it before?
No, and it's not that I don't believe in it. That's definitely don't. That's not that. My gut feeling, I guess because I've witnessed it a few times, is that it can scare away more deer than it will bring in. And it's funny because my first experience with that was actually with the first deer that I ever shot at with a weapon, and that was out in that spot in Wendell. And the story with that, of course, it was a small little spike buck. Well, actually, it was a big spike, but a small deer. My brother was not set up too far from me. It was during bow season, and a spike came walking up onto me. And like I said, we barely ever saw deer out there ever. And it was walking right by me, and I was nervous. Of course, I've never even drawn back on a deer before, and I knew my brother was up with his deer, was about to walk on the trail. And so I said, I'm not going to shoot this deer. I think probably more out of nerves than being nice to him. I think I just, it was one of those things. Do I shoot? No, so, you know what? He's going to walk on this trail right up to where my brother is. I'm going to let him go. I'm going to let him screw up. I don't want to screw up. It's probably more of that than anything. And my brother, the deer got up broadside, and my brother started rattling. Now, of course, this is a little deer that's going to be afraid of rattling. But so my brother started rattling, and the deer just hit the brakes, and he turned. And now he's standing broadside, but facing the other way. And obviously he's going to walk away. And I took a shot at him and hit the sapling right in front of him. Broadhead's still there probably till this day. I went there like 10 years later and found the tree, and the broadhead was still sitting in it. I thought that was pretty cool. But I think I've just had a few experiences here and there where rattling has just either A, scared away deer or kept them at bay. Almost like, when a turkey hangs up, you see them come in and they hang up.
Well,
out of bow range.
I had that experience last year. So I just bought this house and have a very small patch of woods behind me, and put up a stand, just kind of the first straight tree back there. It's not many trees to choose from, and I sitting in it. It was November 11th, I think, and this was the first mature buck I would say that I had an opportunity at. It was like 6:50 in the morning. Sitting in the stand, he's off to my left, coming from behind me, and he's about 60 yards. He's way out of range, and there's all kinds of trees, but I can see him weaving in and out. Put the binoculars on him. He was a nice big 8-pointer, and he just kind of. There was an opportunity where he could have turned to his right and walk up the old log road that my stand is on and into my nice perfect 20-yard range. He didn't do that. He stayed out 45 to 60 yards. Bunch of shit in between us, and he just slowly was meandering, nose to the ground, sniffing for does. And that's when the first time I've done it, pulled out my rattle bag and my grunt call, and I just did a sequence, rattling and grunting. He came back I think it was 8 minutes later. He came. I think it worked. He came right back up, but like you said, he stayed about 45
he didn't
yards,
see anything.
And he was looking for where the fight was. He was looking for the bucks, and he didn't. He saw no movement. He didn't hear anything. He didn't. So he kept the distance. And there was one point where he just needed to take one more step. He would have been in like a 35 broadside, and I was gonna have a nice clean shot at him. He stood there for 7 minutes because I was filming it too. He didn't flinch a muscle for 7 minutes straight. Stood in the same spot. All he had to do was take one more step, and I would have had a shot. But he didn't keep coming because I think the rattle. I got him to come back, but he stayed. Yeah. He kept a buffer.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other thing too is I don't like to do really anything, make any really noise until what I'll usually do.
Until you have to, it's 9 o'clock.
Exactly. So if I'm getting down, I might say, and that's probably until that day that I shot that 10-pointer a couple years ago. I think the only time I'd ever rattled really before then, within the last 5 or 6 years, would be when I'm getting ready to cut down in the morning and see if I can hit one that maybe bedded down close. That might get up and take a look and get not too much to lose then.
Yeah.
But of course I've had bad experiences of that where I wait a little while and nothing, then I get down. I'm getting out of my stand, walk, and there's one standing on the hill. It's probably been standing there for 20 minutes, surveying. But I don't use calls a lot or any of that unless, obviously during the rut I might, but at the end of your sit I might. An evening sit, I don't ever use any of that stuff unless it's a deer that's, out of range. Like last year, that in the morning, that huge buck, I mean, he was an absolute giant, was about 60, 70 yards away, and he cut through in the wide open. He was just cruising. And I choked on my calls. I think I was trying everything. I grunted, bleeding, and then when I waited for him to get, because he could see, it was wide open. So I waited till he got into like some thicker stuff before I rattled. So he's probably over 100 yards away, and I rattled, and he did turn and come back, but I thought he was going to completely circle around wind, but he just he came my direction. Only he was another 60 yards away, and he went up and just kept going to this other bed near it. But he just was looking. He only stopped one time, kind of look, but he's like, I can see 100 yards here. There's nothing walking around, not going to that sound.
Have you heard of people that'll hang some antlers by a rope and jingle?
Oh, yeah, bounce them off the ground.
Bounce them off the ground. Because that actually I think that would have worked in my scenario last year. If I had something hanging there, just a couple little tickles up behind the tree, maybe he would have taken another step. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's like anything. It's the deer. It just depends on that deer.
Yeah.
What his personality is. If you look at, and again, that's why I say, I wouldn't tell somebody don't use your rattle bag, because I'm just going on my own experience and how I feel. I just don't like to make a lot of noise.
Yeah.
I don't like my presence to be known in any way in the woods, whether it's scent or sound. But
yep.
And that's just my feeling. But you look at that buck that I shot a couple years ago. I mean, he came charging in, and I actually was bleeding. And he didn't even care. He stopped a little bit, but I was bleeding before that. I'm not sure if I grunted, but I think I just bleeded. But once I rattled and grunted, he came right in.
Yeah.
He came in looking for a fight.
He was just in the mood. Yeah.
He had broken tines. He had a bristled, when I caped him out, he was cuts all on his shoulder, so he was a fighter. That was just his that was just the type of deer he is. So I think it just depends on the deer.
Yeah.
And you don't know that. You don't know their personality. I've never had a chance to, hang out with them and see, are they fighters? Are they wimps? Are they, super smart, super cautious? I mean, some deer are just stupid. I mean...
Let's talk about if you're in a scenario where, and I know you're doing a lot of stand hunting, but some people might be ground hunting or still hunting, and people might be listening that are going to, with a rifle. But I watch these videos of the mountain deer guys out of Vermont, Rodney Elmer and his kids. They've got some great videos on YouTube too. And one thing they do is they grunt while they walk, because they try to sound, if you're going to walk or it's crunchy and, during that moment, you might as well try to sound like a deer. So they do a lot of, mouth grunting as they walk and snort wheezing with their mouth. And last year I tested out the snort wheeze a few times where I was walking to a stand or I was, leaving the stand and I jumped something, pull up the binoculars, be a small buck, and I would do the snort wheeze, and they would stop and turn and start coming back towards me. So there's like little things like that you can play around with and try to. Do you do any of that when you're walking, or are you still
The only time I'll do that is if I made some noise. So if I'm walking in the dark in the morning, I
crunch a stick,
step on a twig. I usually have my. I guess I've used both. I'm trying to remember if I think I've used both. Just tip the can over or a grunt. A grunt's a little more subtle. Because I think if anything's close by, that's close enough to take a few. Walk a few yards. That can be
super loud, especially in the morning.
Super loud. So a nice subtle grunt, they might hear it. And I think what can help is that they'll freeze up. They're not going to come running in usually. So it might give you an opportunity to get to your stand. They still hear you walking, and they heard a grunt and they can't smell you. And like, well, I guess that was a deer. And, maybe by the time they decide to come in and investigate where they can actually see you, you might have already made your way to the... I don't like to take my time walking in, I'll tell you that. I try and be really quiet, but I don't try and I definitely believe in that theory where a lot of guys will talk about, they know when you're sneaking in. Sometimes it's better just to rush into your stand. I mean, I don't rush in, but...
Well, when you're sneaking, you sound like a predator. Right?
Sure.
So, I'm with you on that. I do find myself taking my time too much very often, and I'll be like, all right, I just got to speed up. You might sweat if it's a long walk, but...
I mean, one of my spots, I walk a path to my stand. My stand's only 30, 40 yards off the path, but... The deer go use that path. They, there's scrapes all over it. They crisscross all over. When I walk in the morning, they might be around. If I know they're in the area, and even when they can see me, if I think they can see me, especially when they can't, like you said, do a little grunt or something, and I will just make noise going to my stand. I'll get to my stand, especially if I think they're over a hump or something, because my feeling is that, okay, they're frozen right now, and they're trying to smell. And if the wind isn't blowing towards them, I'm just going to walk, make noise, get to my stand as fast as I can. Then once I get up in that tree, the noise has stopped.
Yeah.
And they're going to be like, okay.
Down again.
And they might let their guard down, or they might circle the wrong way or something, and just hope they don't get downwind. They'll just get back to what they're doing, and instead of trying to sneak in, that definitely doesn't work.
Yeah, I think that does spook them more.
Yeah, I've seen it so many times.
When it comes to mornings and or evenings or both, what have you had your most success with? Like morning hunts or evening hunts? Because I know that there's a lot of guys out there who will only hunt the evenings when it comes to bow hunting.
So hands down, mornings.
Yeah, that's what I've always
especially during the rut.
Yeah,
hands down. See more deer, more mature bucks. I've shot some nice deer in the evening too, or even seen some, but a lot of times it's so close to last light, even during the rut. It's so close to last light. And I've had deer that I couldn't shoot, big bucks that I can see their big rack, and I couldn't take the shot. I couldn't get on their shoulder. Even at 10 yards, I had one that was under my stand one time, and all I could see was this bright, huge white rack. I had no idea what he was. I just lowered my bow down. I think I actually have had that happen more than once, but I remember one specifically that was just, I don't know what it was, but it looked gigantic under my stand. I could not shoot him. He milled around.
Your bow was on the ground?
No, I'd actually pulled my bow up. I could not get on him. It was too dark.
Yeah.
Too dark, but I could see his white rack. I just feel like evenings are great, and again, I guess it depends on where you're hunting too. If you're hunting right on the edge of the bedding area, what time of year. I do most of my hunting from Halloween and on. I don't really do much hunting at all before Halloween. At all. Even even with the new season, with the new, opening up early in October, I just feel like I ruin my chances.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say ruin them. I just feel like I like to save things for the rut.
Yeah.
I feel like once Halloween hits, that's when most of the action's going to happen.
Last year I had chasing on my camera right behind the house here on Halloween.
Yeah. I've shot a couple nice deer like the first week of the season, and I've seen some, but one of my practices is I just don't hunt a lot. What I'll usually do is I'll set up cameras, in either August or September. I won't touch them. And then maybe opening week, I'll go out once to one spot on an afternoon hunt. I won't hunt mornings early season at all, and I just snag that card, swap it out, hunt, go back home, and then maybe, go to another spot next week. The first couple of weeks until Halloween, I might only hunt 2 or 3 times, if that. Just because that's the way I feel. I think this year I might do it a little differently for new spots. And my goal this year is to try and just find some new areas and hunt some new areas, couple by canoe and stuff like that. And
I wanted to get into that too.
And I just, other than new spots, I just feel like I want to leave it for the rut.
But you're a morning guy too. There's something
absolutely.
about just being in the woods as it wakes up. The woods are waking up around you, and
absolutely.
I've always seen all the activity in the morning.
I always feel like I'm going to see deer in the morning.
Yeah.
But in the evenings, I'm always nervous that I'm not going to see them till I'm getting out of my stand. That's just how I always feel. I get so nervous in evenings when it comes around. You get a half an hour. I'm like, oh, please, just come out now. Come out now. Don't, getting stuck in the stand. Trying to text your wife and tell you that you're not going to be home for a while because you're stuck with deer around. Like, she's going to understand that when it's, you're supposed to be home to eat. And it's just.
Yeah, I think if anything, if you're the only time to avoid the morning is if the only route into your stand goes right through all the food.
Right, and obviously, like I said, whether it's hunting afternoon or morning, it can depend on, where you're set up, obviously. You're catching them coming off the bedding area or food or whatever it is.
What's your favorite food source to set up on? You like the oak trees and the acorns are falling?
Oaks, just because I think it's tough to, maybe I'm just not good at it, but I think it's just tough to find food sources for around here. Again, the way things...
it's either a swamp or the CRP field, which stays green throughout the year. The swamps are good because they stay green, right?
Right. But even if you can find a CRP field, most of the... I don't have that. I don't have... most... I can't even think of...
power lines and stuff like
exactly,
that.
Right. Power lines obviously are great, but I think it's tough finding food. I think big oaks, look for the oaks, especially if it's, if it's an area that doesn't have a lot of oaks. And then you can find that little, I think that, a lot of guys do that. Try and find that little knob that's got some oaks on it. And then boom, you're in. Yeah. That's, the does will be there to feed. And so the bucks will be there too. So, if you can get in there. But I think the biggest thing is getting in there. That's, I think, probably one of the biggest advices to give to, if our hunters are saying, new hunters are saying, I'm not seeing deer. It's probably not because the deer aren't there, and it's possibly not because you set up in a bad spot. It's how you getting in and out of there, and as spreading your scent and getting in and out of your stand. I think it's the number one thing.
Sometimes taking the harder route in, not taking the easy trail, because deer will walk on the same trails that humans do. They're looking for the path of least resistance. If you're trying to take the easiest way in, I think sometimes you're walking where all the deer are. So I do, like in Vermont, I'll find myself going straight up a steep hill. Yeah. Sometimes to get to the top where there might be a saddle or, a terrain feature that you're looking for. Go straight up a cliff. Yeah, you're going to be sweating, and it's going to be a pain in the ass. But
it's tough. Trust me, plenty of times I'll take the easy route. But I think actually a lot of the reasons that I do that a lot, try and find that easy backdoor way into your stand, especially for the morning. Mm-hmm. But even afternoons, you don't want to be walking through a lot area. It's tough when you have a spot that's way in. It's kind of a gamble too.
Also, try to find where most of the hunters, if there's going to be hunters in the patch of woods that you're hunting, and in suburban hunting it is going to be that way most of the time. You're going to walk a couple hundred yards, see a stand every 100, every 200 yards. Find out where all of them are coming in. Chances are they're coming the easiest route. They're going to be parking in a main parking lot somewhere and taking the trails in, and set up. Try to find your access on the back side of it, whether it's through a private land that you have permission on, or
Yeah.
You can slip in through a swamp or something. Yeah, try to get where they're going to be pushing the deer to you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely that's good advice. I mean, especially where, like you said, there's a lot of, especially public land. I mean, it's got its own challenges, and I would say, a lot of hunters, and I'm not knocking them. I mean, I do the same thing in a lot of my areas, but there's a lot of guys that won't walk that far in, and so if you can get in and around on another area, that's where the deer are gonna be.
Yep.
As long as you don't spook them out, but yeah, especially, I mean, public land is tough. It's tough.
If you're going to give, so what's your one piece of advice to a newbie, like to the rookie that's listening to this and wants to go out and hunt and try? I mean, first of all, you got to get a bow and you got to shoot, right? You just got to get a bow and you got to start shooting. I wouldn't go into the woods if you haven't practiced, right? Because
oh yeah, definitely.
Bow hunting, you have to take ethical shots. You're choosing to take an animal's life, or you're choosing to take a shot that there's a risk where you might injure them and not recover them, and that's the worst, right? We've had that feeling.
It's the worst. It's the worst. It's the worst as a hunter, at least for most guys, I think. I mean, I think a lot of hunters have incredible respect for the animal, which a lot of anti-hunters would never think that for a second.
Not at all.
But most guys have an incredible respect for that animal, especially a mature animal, because they know they've been spending all these hours in the woods. They know what these deer do to survive, and so most guys don't take it for granted. They understand what an exceptional animal, a white-tailed deer is, and
especially the older ones that've been around, and you might only see that deer one time.
Sure,
right?
I mean, I say that to my wife. I say that to people that don't hunt all the time about like these deer. That buck on the wall probably is never. No human has seen anyways, possibly.
Yeah.
You never know, and it's like
even though they're living in a potentially
sure.
high populated area.
And it's, definitely good advice. That'd probably be the first advice.
You got to get a bow.
First advice is you need to be good with that, because even when you're, incredible shooter, as you know, anything can happen. Even if you were removing the adrenaline piece, which is a huge aspect of it.
Yeah.
Just anything can happen. You drop your arm. Anything. You hit a twig. You're on the wrong spot. You use the wrong pin. I mean, there's a million reasons that guys miss deer, and again,
they're exceptional archers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know one of the guys that was hunting in the spot that we used to hunt years ago. The guy was like a state champ or something like that from Massachusetts. I'm going back quite a few years, and he just would miss deer, and he just because the adrenaline kicks in, and there's a lot of reasons that are going to screw up your shot. You not practicing should not be one of them.
Right.
That's the one thing you have control.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you should be, exceptional at shooting, and then just, if other things happen, they happen.
And practice shooting how you expect to be hunting too. If you're going to be on the ground, practice from the ground. If you're going to be hunting from a stand,
yep, definitely shooting from a stand is good advice, because it is definitely is different.
Yeah.
And again, it's not that big of a target that you're shooting at.
Yeah.
And as you know, you could, an inch or two to the left or right, and you're hitting the shoulder, and, you get problems.
So get out there, get a bow, and practice it. And
practice.
Walk in the woods. Do you have to become a woodsman? You have to study the animal and look for sign and do all that stuff. But you can, if you're really good at shooting, you've taken your bow course, all the stuff you got to do legally. You can walk into the woods, like you said. You just get into a spot, first time ever being there, and you can see deer. I mean, a lot of it is luck. Get into a tree. If you don't have a tree stand or you can't afford it yet, bring a seat, a fold up seat, and sit next to a big pine tree that's got some cover for you on one side, and just get out in the woods, put the hours in.
I think a good piece of advice for a newbie or someone that wants to get a friend into hunting is also try and bring them where there is deer, so that they're going to see something. And when I say there is deer, I mean, there's a lot of deer there, and there's probably a good. I wouldn't take them out the first time to some new spot.
To your best spot either.
Your best, yeah. Don't take them to your best spot.
Take them to your C spot.
But don't take them to a new spot. One weekend you're going to go out shotgun hunting in the state forest with a whole bunch of guys and say, hey, you want to get into hunting? Why don't you come with me? And he's probably not going to see anything.
Yeah.
I would take him during archery season, or again, if you don't have someone to take you, you're going, try and get someone to, help you out with an area. And, just look for the sign. and just hopefully you see deer. And the reason I say that is because I'm sure there are a lot of people that will not, kind of like what I did, and maybe you did too, growing up in Vermont, is there's probably not a lot of people that are going to sit in the woods and get up early and sit out in the freezing cold and never see anything.
Yeah, well,
keep doing it.
They just think it's super boring, and
Right.
they don't understand it. I mean, to me, it all goes back to doing something with my dad. You see your dad.
Oh, yeah,
Dad's
absolutely.
going away to deer camp for the weekend. What's so great about that? Well,
Sure.
you'll learn some when
Sure,
you get old
exactly.
enough, right? And then you look forward to it, and then you're sitting in the woods with your dad, and you start hearing deer, and he's excited, and then you get excited.
Yeah.
And it all kind of goes back to the person who's introducing you, will have a big effect on your hunting forever.
I mean, I do see a lot of guys that even see them on bow sight there when we go that are jumping on that don't have anybody to take them hunting. Their father didn't hunt and all that. And I'm like,
There's going to be a lot of people listening like that too.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're an adult, chances are your dad didn't get you into hunting if you're just starting now.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm surprised that there hasn't been a program started up to, it's for people to help out and guys that are getting into it, because it is tough. It's something, and I think this year you're going to see a lot more people. I mean, because of COVID and everything going on, you see people. I mean, you can't buy a kayak now. You can't get a campsite now. I mean, I think you're going to see
Bass Pro and Cabela's was wiped out of hunting and fishing stuff.
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot more people trying it out for the first time. And again, a lot of these people don't really know what they're doing as far as getting into it. And then if they don't see anything, their first year, they're like, "Oh, this is boring. I'm done with this sport."
Yeah.
And that stinks. Because there aren't too many. Like I said, there aren't too many people that want to sit, and I don't blame them. They want to sit and not see anything. You need some action. I feel bad. I've been taking my son, who is almost 10 this year, and I've been taking him out. I put up a double ladder stand, and I think I've been taking him out for 3 years or so, and we haven't seen a deer.
Oh.
Every time we've sat, and I've probably taken him out 2 to 5 times a season at least.
Wow.
And
you got to take them to your A spot.
And I know. Well, it's funny that you say that, because I think I'm going to have to put I've been talking about putting a double ladder stand up there to bring him, because I know he'll see deer there. But I've taken him some good spots, and I just don't see deer.
Yeah.
And it's never because of him, because he's
But
pretty
still,
good.
he sees when you come home how excited you are with
absolutely.
your deer and all that stuff. So
And he gets excited. My son knows he's a pretty smart kid for his age, and he gets the whole kind of lifestyle and kind of what's behind actually the deer and getting the meat, and he understands the life cycle of a deer, and he understands population control and stuff like that. Like, he's very intuitive to that stuff. He's not ignorant to it, which a lot of adults are, and that's good. I mean, I will not be surprised if he, in a couple of years, he doesn't want to have anything to do with it anymore when he's a teenager, and hopefully he'll be like me, and when he's 20 he'll get back into it. But you never know. All you can do is try and put it in front of them and hope they go with it.
I think because he's had all those sits with you or not seeing anything, I think that can be a good thing too. Because when you guys finally do see some deer coming in, that's going to be exciting. Well, if it's a buck, that's going to be even more exciting. And if it's like a huge buck, then he could be hooked for life too. I think there's something to suffering a little bit.
Yeah.
Like my buddy that I introduced in Vermont, he barely saw any deer there for 7 years. He went through the suffering, and now he went to New York. He killed his first deer, and he is just absolutely hooked into it.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually like, when it's really bad weather, I like to be in the woods too, just personally, because you suffer through a really bad rainy day. Last year, my first buck that I killed with a bow was 38 to 40 degrees. It was windy, and it rained for from sun up until about 10 a.m. It was just straight rain, and it was cold, and it was not really enjoyable for those first 4 hours. As soon as the rain let up and the wind let up, there's deer movement. That buck came right in. That was my first day ever killing a buck with a bow, was in one of the worst weather days. So some people will just stay at home, and that's fine. But I love getting out there in that bad weather. I mean, also it takes away a lot of their scent. It's harder for them to smell if it's raining really hard.
Sure, absolutely. A light rain is good too.
Yeah.
I will say one of the things as far as weather goes that I've noticed during the rut is super high windy days. I see bucks.
Yep.
I killed one of my biggest bucks.
I love hunting in the wind.
On torrential wind. Like, if there's does and heat, it's the rut. I think the wind means absolutely nothing. I mean, sometimes they might be laying down, but again, it just depends what's going on in that area that day.
And if you want to try ground hunting and still hunting, that's a great time to do it, is when it's super windy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Just another quick little story, because you were mentioning about my son and, not seeing anything. I took him turkey hunting the first time last year, and I took him to a great spot. And I brought my bow. I had a blind all set up. And I actually had been hunting the spot just to get a friend turkey there. And my son and I took him out late morning, I brought the DVD player and everything, because we were going to be there for hours. And I think we got in at like 8:30 and 9. We heard one gobble early, and that was it. But then like 3 or 4 hours go by. It's 11:15, and he wants to go. He's ready to go, and I don't want to push him. I never push anything on him, especially with hunting and shooting the bow, which he's getting really good with. And he wanted to leave, so I said, okay. I wanted him to stay till 11:30, and I packed everything up, packing the camera up and everything, and then he's like, Dad, can I try the call by myself? I said, sure. Sure enough, he hits the call, and 2 toms gobble in the woods right behind us. We're sitting on power lines.
That was cool, huh?
Yeah, of course, Dad goes into total panic mode, set the camera up, all that. Both the birds come right in, and I told him, just do not move. Stand up, don't move. And of course, I completely blow it. And I was using Magnus bullheads, and I don't know what I did. I think I panicked. And I shot one of them and hit him just in the chest, did nothing to him, and they wandered off. So when they walked, my son was like, can I talk now? And I said, sure. And he goes, Daddy, that was the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me in my life.
Yeah.
And when he said that, I was like, oh,
so he's got the bug.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so.
It doesn't have to be a deer. People love turkey hunting. Yeah. He's got that bug now.
He's never said, when we've come back from hunting, he's never said that was boring. He appreciates that he gets to spend time with his dad.
Yeah.
And he'll say that. Yeah. I'm sure when he's 12, 13, it's probably going to change. But for now, he likes to spend time with me. So, I try and do it as much. That's why I said last year I tried to take him out as many times as I could. And we actually did have a deer come on us last year. We were hunted on the ground, and I called a buck in. And what stunk was I saw the buck, and he couldn't see it. Mm-hmm. And but he still loved it because he could hear the deer walking in and all that. So that was pretty cool.
Awesome. All right. So what's your outlook for this season? What are your goals for 2020?
Well, my biggest goal definitely is to try and get into the saddle hunting. Not so much because I'm not going to say it's the new thing, but it's definitely taking off.
Yeah. These
last 2 years. I just want to utilize it as just to be able to go into spots that that are either hard to get into, or I just never really wanted to waste the time getting in there and setting up a stand only to realize I got to take it out.
Yeah.
I don't hunt some spots just because of that. I don't, especially if I have limited time to hunt. So I'm going to do a lot of that. I picked up a saddle, the Phantom saddle, this year in like February when it first came out. I have my climbing sticks all modded up like everybody and their brother has. Everybody's got their mods, which is pretty cool. But that's a lot of that kind of mobile hunting is I'm gonna.
And you mentioned canoe. Are you gonna try to access some spots by canoe this year?
Yeah, I'm hoping to do that. Last year, I had planned to do it. I don't think I did it last year. I had a couple spots that we had scouted out. A friend of mine I had scouted out by canoe, and I don't think we ever actually hit those spots. But that's another plan because if you can get in, I had planned to purchase a kayak this summer for fishing and hunting.
Yeah,
and can't buy them. Some of them are like 6-8 weeks waiting, and I just the ones that I was looking at. And then I just said, I said, forget it. I'll wait till the winter and buy one. So next year I'll try because I have some spots that I could use a kayak with.
Yeah.
But I think that's going to be my big thing this year is just trying more new spots kind of on the go, spots that I haven't even scouted yet.
Yep. Saddle's going to help for that. I'm going to get into the saddle, I think, next year and try it, but this summer was too busy.
I'll tell you, I like it. I wish I've had it 10 years ago. I know it's been around for a while. It's not like it's a brand new thing or anything, but I wish I got into it years ago. Just it seems, again, I haven't hunted yet out of it, and I'm going to try and film doing it as well. I'm going to try and film this year some more.
It might be better for filming, right? Like swiveling around the tree. And
I've talked to a couple guys that said yes, it was. A couple people have said that. They give me some pointers on how to set it up. Because filming definitely, we didn't even get into that, but that's a whole nother challenge that is not easy. But it's worth it.
Yeah.
worth it.
It's great to have those memories. Look back on it too. It's there forever. Your YouTube page is awesome, and it's there forever.
Yeah, that's exactly why I do it. I mean, I started filming because for my dad to bring stuff back to him because he couldn't go out in the woods anymore, and I did it with turkey hunting, and then I just got into it, and so you have those memories. That's why I don't even mind not getting the shot. I think I have a couple deer anyways, big deer that I just couldn't get the shot. I'm not. No one's paying me. It's not on TV. I literally. And I only started a YouTube page so I could share. That was the easiest way back then, years ago, to share clips and stuff I had. Yeah. And then I just kind of got into the page a little bit more and took it a little bit more seriously. But
well, hopefully you get one with your saddle this year.
Yeah, I'm hoping that's the goal.
My only goal is to shoot. I want to shoot an 8-pointer. My biggest buck's a 6-pointer. My whole life been hunting for such a long time. It feels like, right? Like 23 years, and I want to get an 8-pointer this year, and maybe if I'm super lucky, get 2 of them.
Yeah, you never know. You never know. That's any second. It can happen any second. Your season can be the worst and changes in 2 seconds.
Yeah. Well, we'll check back in throughout the season too. And if one thing I want to do with this podcast is, if you get a buck and you feel like you want to tell the story, call me up, and I want to record some podcasts about kills as close to the kill as possible. So
that's a great idea.
The story's fresh, the adrenaline might still be there. So I want to be open throughout the season, and if you get one, you want to do that, give me a call.
I think that's a great idea. There's a lot of hunters that actually do like to listen to,
especially
stories.
During the season.
I know
and in Mass, when you can't hunt on Sundays, right? So Sunday is a great podcast day. We're going to be releasing this every Sunday throughout the season. So
I look forward to it.
Well, dude, thanks so much for being here. It was great.
Thank you for having me. It was a great time.
Yeah, and you want to go shoot our bows?
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Hunt Suburbia podcast. We hope you enjoyed it. We're going to release an episode every single Sunday throughout the season, throughout the entire year, and we will possibly be releasing some bonus episodes here and there throughout the week as people, come in freshly off a bow kill and tell their stories. We hope that happens throughout the season. There might be weeks where you get 2 or 3 bonus episodes. You might not get one for a couple of weeks, but there will be some bonus episodes. But you can count on us every single Sunday to have a new interview on throughout the season. Once again, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week. Big bucks I've been dreaming often, every night till I'm in a coffin. Vermont woods to the burbs of Boston, I'm looking for a tree to get lost in. Crisp mornings, little dust in the snow. Quality time, just me and my bow. Fall evenings, I know just where to go for some quality times for me and my bow. It's just me and my